Well, I want to come back to something that you said to me before that I didn't comment on, but I was like kind of quietly floored, which was you said that when you were painting, which was like when you were teaching and doing grad school, um, you knew like what a painting would look like before you made it, and then you would do it. And the sort of mystery or excitement to that wasn't really there for you, which to me is just amazing in and of itself because I don't think I could possibly like make a painting from my mind and just like do it. There it is. You know? I'm like not that good at it. So I feel like I'm always just like working with my own limitations, you know, are is part of what maybe makes my process interesting for me. And I would love to hear more about how drawing is different or how it became different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think like one of the differences, God, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get graphite all over myself. It's like always smudgy. One of the tricky parts about my situation back then was like I really fell in love with this way of painting that the process was rather abstract, but then it would look extremely realistic when you were done. So I was like very slowly like like on my plumb line I'm like measuring verticals and horizontals of everything, and it was always working from life. And I thought it was so fascinating because you're literally looking at something in front of you and you think it's one size. And then you bring it into these measurements and you're like, it's not this size at all. Like it's just what I'm thinking, I'm perceiving, and what I'm actually seeing were so different. So initially, like mapping that out onto a painting was really fascinating. And then I was just obsessed with color mixing, and I had a really limited palette and I would mix and mix and mix, and like I was really hardcore about it. And it was almost gamifying it that if I could get the exact color in the right shape and put it down, and I pretty much only worked with a palette knife, that it would like really just feel and look like what was in front of me. And it was incredible, but also very limiting. Like the only thing that's really going to change from that is you're finally going to get better and then you can just make more complicated paintings, but they always kind of follow this formula. And that was the part that really drained me. And I was starting to get a little bit more playful and they were getting a little bit more weird, but I was still staying within the boundaries of what I had decided was an okay thing for a painting to be. And that's where that struggle really came from. Um, Also, I didn't want to work from life anymore and I wanted to work from images. And so I'm working from them, but in painting it's like I was still attached to like getting the colors accurate, and then I'm working from all of these different images that have different light sources and different temperatures, and so I'm trying to get all of the temperatures to work together and the light to work together, and it was just that was not what I really cared about. What I really cared about at its essence was the composition and just seeing all of these things in relation to each other. So the drawing was so revelatory because it took all of the color away and all of the temperature away. And then I just got to focus on light and form relating to each other on this 2D plane. And that was just that was just it for me. I loved it. And
It's so much more like sculpture in a way too. I mean, your pieces
Mhm.
remind me of marble and the way that you're sort of pulling away. Of course, you get to
Mhm.
add too, and so it's, you know, it's not as unforgiving as marble is, but you know, it's got that quality of where you really do notice light and shade because you're
Mhm.
not being drawn off by color and temperature and all of these other elements. Can you also talk about how figures have entered and exited, and where what role do figures have in your work?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest.
That's a good answer.
I really don't know. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. I always feel like I don't know. I'm just one of those people that that like the artist statement does not come very naturally, and I
Like
just work at it. I've worked on it for 20 years.
the
And
lowest,
one,
yeah, statement.
but I mean, it makes sense though, because it's always evolving. We are, and the artist statement will as well. But one thing that I've landed on that I really like is just this collaboration between people and nature, and that in drawing nature, I'm kind of reminded of the nature within myself. So with that in mind, I do feel like they're always like I'm not just going to draw a plant. It's not interesting to me. And even like when I go out to take the pictures, I'm not just taking pictures of stuff that's just completely unadulterated um, nature. I'm always interested in it in collaboration with people. Like, is there a plant that's growing somewhere that it shouldn't be, but it's growing anyway? Like, how do we garden? What gets to be a plant and what doesn't? Like we're in Amsterdam where we're so close to Vondelpark, which is kind of our version of Central Park. And it looks like an absolute paradise, but it's truly a Disneyland situation. I mean, this whole country is a bog, and somehow they figured out how to harness water so that all of these things grow. And I mean, it's the city's really like a giant sandbar. So it's so funny to see this like beautiful, lush nature, and it's just on this like fake infrastructure. So I'm interested in that. And so, like, when the figures started coming back in, one thing that I started thinking of was, well, I'm thinking a lot about women, and I think about, especially in the last couple of years, I think about domesticity. Like, I thought about it when I got married. I thought about it way more when I had kids, and I was just in the house all the time. And I think about women and like this amazing wildness and intuitive nature that we have. And we're so generative. And in our fully supported state, I mean, there's like literally nothing we can't do. And yet we're like kind of boxed in by these formal rules. And so I thought about adding these figures in, but then using the landscape as rooms around them. And so it feels wild, but really it's like, here's your wild field, and it's like laid out, but you only get to be in here. So I thought that was interesting, as just a point to create. And then I also think it's really interesting that like when like I got really nerdy about the Victorians and how, and it's a very well documented era. It's one of the first that are really well documented. And it was this era where, women are still in the house, but there's some like romantic ideas and like thoughts and emotions are finally being recognized. And they're like still stuck in the house, and there is just this glut of nature motifs that is flooding the homes. They are avid exotic plant collectors. They're just bringing all of this wildness into the home. And I think it's so curious. So it's such a cool point to like be bringing figures or figurative elements and like domestic elements and decorative elements. Like I never used flowers before. That was another thing that was off limits for
Totally.
some reason.
Totally.
But then I started decorating these rooms and the flowers, and it's just like I was like, yes, this needs to come out. And then we talked a little bit about this before, but just about experimentation
Yeah.
and taking left turns that maybe don't go anywhere, but like how important that is.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to turn you around.
Yeah.
So my studio now has two sides to it,
Mm.
and there's a drawing side and a painting side. Like the paintings just really, really wanted to be made again, and they wanted to be made in a way that was completely different from how they were being made before.
Yeah.
And it honestly took like a solid 2 years of just really, really bad, awkward painting before anything started working. And
Yeah.
they were really rough. Um, but like I think when you're called to do something and you do it anyway in the face of like not really knowing how to do it, eventually, like I call it wobbling forward. Like you just have your eye on it. And despite what's coming up, like you just kind of keep going with it. And
Well,
yeah, eventually I hit on something. So
when I was a younger painter, I feel like I would think that something was going to take too long to figure out. And so I wouldn't do it. Be like, I mean, maybe I could paint that way, but I don't now. And there was always this sort of sense of urgency that was
mhm,
totally invented by me, but like, but also our culture, but like, I was just like, well, just do what you're doing, do what you're doing, And
yeah,
as I've gotten older, I've realized like, if it takes you 3 years to learn how to do something, so what?
whatever.
Because then you know how to do it like forever, and 3 years is nothing so
Totally.
it helps to open up that sort of space for risk when you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna, like you said, wobble forward and see where
Hmm.
it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the other thing that I've found is that you're often called to try something and you either do it or you don't. And what is it? Like Elizabeth Gilbert says this too. Like if you don't do it, then someone else, then it's given to someone else. And
That's a
I like to add that they do it better. So, but
Not really fair, but yeah.
but like I think it doesn't even really matter if it's good or bad. It's that there's a really critical lesson or a clue that you're supposed to get by making it. And if you don't make it, you don't get the clue. And that clue is telling you how to get to the next part. And I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go through like a quick clue to clue to clue of like
Yeah,
how something really horribly cringy turned into something that ended up being really fun.
I love that.
So a long time ago, um, I mean, when I was an undergrad, I was studying ink wash drawings, and it was another thing where you're kind of testing your eye and you're just really honestly looking at something, and you're just painting the shadows. And there's a rule that you can't stop and you can't look at it for 2 weeks because you will judge it too harshly. So you have to put it away. And after 2 weeks, you can see it with fresh eyes again. And then you can see if it worked. But like, absolutely, if you mess up, you just have to keep going and like integrate that. And I've done them that are a lot more accurate than this. This was just an older one that's kind of fun that I just happen to have up. So I'm
How
just
old are we
looking at a,
talking? This is an undergrad. This is newer than that,
this is like 6 years ago,
right?
probably
Okay. Okay.
5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I was just in the garden, just moving around, very low commitment, just making a drawing.
Yeah.
But I think like the shapes are there, and that's important that I'm like leaving out the negative space. Any place that light is negative space, and that's always what I'm leaving out. So I sort of trained myself how
Mm.
to see in that way. And then, um, so while I was making all of these horrifically cringy drawings or paintings, which I feel like I've painted over most of them, so I can't show you how bad they are or
Good excuse.
how awkward. They weren't it, they were hanging on to something old and they weren't it. But during this period, I don't know what possessed me, but like all I wanted to do was buy fashion magazines. And I was like, this does not feel like a very productive creative pursuit, but I let myself. So I bought a couple, and then I found that I very quickly was just like ripping out all of the pictures that were resonating and then throwing the magazines away, which seemed even more nonsensical. But eventually I was like, oh, well, maybe you need to be like putting them in something. And it was also like a time where I did not have very much time to myself. Like I was constantly being interrupted by my little kids. And like rubber cementing something really well into a book was so deeply satisfying because it was something that I could see quickly. And
And in
it
a
kind of,
material that your children aren't allowed to use either. I feel like
yeah.
there's something about rubber cement. It's not a glue stick. It's not washable. It's,
It's very toxic,
yeah,
stinky.
makes it
You're not allowed in
special.
here. Exactly. So I started this little sketchbook project, and It didn't even matter. Like I wasn't allowed to think too much about it. I just had to be pulling things. And I was also kind of composing them. I'm pulling things that were from different magazines. Sometimes they were more involved, like this one. Color was really important. There was something really important to me about the vibe or the mood that they were presenting. Um, I was kind of like cutting up books, which I shouldn't be doing. That was a whole other weird project where like I cut out every single thing that I underlined in a book and I have a box of all the
Oh,
sentences,
oh, wow. Okay.
which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, so they turned into this thing and it just became momentum. And
Mm,
I think sometimes we like get ourselves into those shoulds, like
mm,
my practice should look this way. I should be working on this thing. I should. And I think you just need to listen closer and hear what actually wants to come up and be seen. And the fashion magazines are also interesting because they are people and they are figurative, but there's also like a real sense of mood through like the colors that get paired together. And I really, really, really want to tap into like color is mood, color is vibration. I'm thinking about like aura colors and all sorts of things. And like removing the figures and like the absence of them, kind of like creating something interesting in the landscape or theatrical. I mean,
mm.
there's a million of these, but then in the back, I started to collect like all of these like single colors.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen with this yellow? Like how are people pairing it, in this particular season?
And with your
It
fabulous yellow tape, like the perfect color for it.
Yeah, we have really good tape here. It's I need to get you a roll of it. That's what I need to do.
Oh,
But yeah, like I started to think about, how these colors could relate and like what that like feeling was. And I love that they were all attached to women and identity. And, like I love fantasy shopping. I mean, it's not conducive for my life at all, but you would feel like a really different woman if you're wearing like a white dress with like pink shoes versus like some like darker richer colors. I think it really affects you. So I thought about almost like a color book, and when I wanted to use something or I was really pulled to a particular yellow, I'm thinking like how many different ways are people using it and like what am I inspired to do. I was really thinking a lot about like opposites of like yellow and purple being together and like how that bridges, or like a kind of neutral grayish color will look purple when it's next to a yellow, and
right.
just how much fun you can have with that.
Yeah.
And so when I started making these, I was also thinking about wallpaper a lot. This one down here,
I love that.
definitely.
Really, really enjoy that one.
There were just all of these Dutch people wearing navy and brown for this one particular week, and I was all about it. And that's how
And also
these,
the fact that it's like it's daisies, or it appears to be. So like
yeah,
my brain, my memory is going white and yellow, and yet the painting is going brown and blue. And that
yeah,
contrast is
fun.
really like it's another way of having that evocative memory element
Mhm.
of the work.
Yeah, yeah, and it does and has that graphic thing, like it does that shape thing that I liked where I'm like, what if I'm just blocking the negative space? So it's, in a way you're getting that thing where you're like leaving the daisies
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
just drawing what's behind that. And
Right.
that one led to some other ones where I'm just kind of drawing the negative shapes and just playing with like these really kind of punchy colors and seeing what kind of a relationship they have.
Yeah.
um I was in the summertime, we were traveling a lot and I didn't have a studio while we were doing that, and one of the first color studies that I started to do were these little gouache ones, even where I noticed like the sun. We don't have sun, so I was so excited to see it. But like I was in Spain and there was this light coming down through the trees in the place that we were staying, and it was projecting onto the wall. And I had this, bunch of colored paper and colored wash, and I just went over there and just started taping them to the wall and making
Oh,
these
shadow.
really quick little
Oh,
shadow studies.
yeah.
And they're just like so gestural and like I don't use big brushes typically,
Yeah.
but I made myself
Yeah.
and it changes it.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I love those.
Thanks. And yeah, but that kind of led me to figuring out these paintings. And it was a mix between, thinking about the negative space, leaving the positive, thinking about quicker paintings. Even with this one, like I was thinking about these brown and blue
Yeah.
pairings that I was seeing a lot. But not as deep as the daisy one, but like I don't know. I kind of got stuck with this one with just using the espresso brown and the king's blue, but then bringing that kind of chestnut color in from, some creative work that someone else did. That was enough to kind of click it together.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is like everything counts. And if
Yeah.
you discount it, you miss, yeah, like I said before, you miss that clue.
Totally.
So,
And I think I'm so interested in this sort of non-rational, non-linear form of thinking that's happening in our bodies all the time and in our subconscious. But when you really like let it come to the fore and don't try to shut it down or organize it, what happens? I mean, the painting I'm working on right now is the ugliest painting I've ever made. I'm just like proudly owning that. I haven't shown it to anybody yet, but
good job.
I'm like, it is so ugly and cringy. And because of that, every time I work on it, I won't let myself go into like, what does this painting need? Like where does the composition want, and I mean, believe me, I try, like I will, and I'll be like, stop, stop, because I'm just so curious. What happens if every time I come to this painting, I'm just like, do, and just like letting it
Hmm.
be intuitional hits, where is it? What is that gonna become?
Well, you're never going to be able to paint another painting unlike that again. I mean, it's like once I
When do
bet
you
it's going to
know?
be your favorite painting. I really do.
Maybe. We'll see. Um, I want to ask you about writing in your work because I'm not seeing it currently in your studio, but I've definitely seen in a lot of your pieces in person,
Yeah, it's up there.
especially maybe in the last 10 years or so, how writing has come
Man.
kind of from the margins into the middle. And
Mhm.
what was that transition like, and what is the writing doing for you?
Yeah, I'm going to bring this back here a little bit. Um, yeah, I don't have as much writing on this one, but like it's here and I think
There.
you'll be able to see. Um, I listen to a lot of books. I love filling my brain for the most part when I'm working. When I'm making like critical decisions about the composition and stuff, I don't. But when I'm working, like when I'm in the flow of it, I like to listen to books. And like I'm always growing while I'm making the work, and I like to listen to books that are, maybe it's a biography where I'm learning about how somebody else dealt with challenges or being kind of inspired or illuminated by that. Other times I'm listening to stuff that's just like general self-improvement stuff that I'm interested in. Sometimes it's like a grammar book and other times it's like a psychology book. I mean it goes wide. I go wide.
Yeah.
but um but yeah, I just love transformation and growth. And so as I'm making the drawing transform and grow over many weeks or many months, like I am actually changing at the same time.
Yeah,
I started like in this one, I'm doing it on the margins. At this point, like less of the writing's going into the drawings, especially on commissions. It's like I
sure.
don't know how much they they need of that.
That would be
But you
hard.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, and any ideas will just get, put on the outskirts. And I was doing this residency at 100 West Corsicana, and I had these three 12-foot drawings, one next to each other, and I'm up on a ladder and I'm listening to this stuff. And like I could put it in my notes app and I can put it on the margins for a while, but eventually you get farther into the drawing and you can't. And oh my God, it felt like the scariest thing. It felt like I was just pasting my diary on the drawing. But I'm like, these notes feel important. They feel so urgent. So does making the drawing. Like, what would happen if I just wrote it directly on here? And it's like you were mentioning memory. It's really that way. You're writing something that feels urgent that you were viscerally responding to, or maybe it's an idea. Usually it was just like a jotted quote, and then you keep drawing, and then that leaf becomes more important because it's the pressing thing for that moment. So
yeah.
you just kind of like exist in this situation of constant urgency replacing former urgency. And then
So true.
parts of them, is that life. And then parts get erased, parts stay. And that's kind of how memory works. It's like, 95% of it is gone, but you have these little bits that are super, super vivid. And it is really funny which ones stay. But also, like, I was only going to find those particular parts really interesting at that specific age. If I was reading the same book 10 years later, I probably would have a completely different set of quotes. So, yeah, that's how they came in. And it felt like another layer of like the inner world and the created world kind of like coming together and being one.
Yeah, yeah. And it also feels like it's another way of bringing woman into the landscape. Obviously, you as the woman, but also
Yeah.
this idea, because I think that, it's your handwriting and the things that you would be called to write down probably in a lot of these cases are different. Even the things you're listening to are different than what a male
Mm,
artist would be
for
writing
sure.
on or listening to or thinking about. But it's so specific and unique to like that moment, just like the shadow falling is going to be that moment,
Mm.
and it becomes another visual element. I mean, I also would find it so terrifying. And I think writing in art is like, I don't know, it's just, I'm very intrigued by it. And like, I love Cy Twombly. And like, whenever I go up to one of his paintings and I'm like, what does that say? It's like, I love it. And I could definitely see how that would have been a huge leap.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I'm thinking about his work, which I also absolutely love. But it's like how much pressure there would be to consciously write words on a piece,
Yeah.
and how much meaning would be imbued in a word that you were consciously putting up. I mean, there's such an army of words in my drawings that none of them matter, all of them matter. Like you're just kind of like looking around, but I can't speak to all women by any measure, but myself, I mean, that's really how I work, and my brain works. And we talked about this a while back, where I saw something where like they were like men's brains are, each thing has its own box. And obviously, I'm not speaking to all men, but my husband is this way, and I thought it was very funny. But
Really.
they have their relationship box, they have a box for this and this in their brain, and then a woman's mind is like the box of cable cords that is in the closet, and every single cord is connected to every single other cord. I'm like, yes, like everything is everything else, and it's all connected. And that's why I can't just say one beautiful sentence, because it's just like plants aren't plants. They're also people, and they're all yeah, they're all of the things. Like we're all connected.
Yeah. And I think that becoming a mother maybe like accentuates this quality that's probably true for a lot of women anyway, but it's like you are no longer really allowed to keep anything separate because it's going to fall apart. Like it's not going to work
Mhm.
for you. You know, it's like you don't get to like have art time and parenting and like, you know, it's like and
Yeah.
relationships, you know, it's like everything has to blend together. And what there's almost there's like this creative surrender that can happen there of like, oh, it all goes together. There's
Yeah.
whatever I was trying to do to keep this apart was completely artificial and not helping any of the things. So once it's all together, it's like there's a freedom. You just wander from one thing to the next, from
Yeah.
plant to foot to words to abstract space. And yeah.
Yeah. And it's something I think we do so well. And when we fight it, it's really putting ourselves at a disadvantage. Um, I even really experienced it with precision. I mean, like before kids, I mean, I definitely have more energy and time, but but I also had like this more ideals, I think, of what a piece needed to look like, and that should idea was more present. And I would want to fill every part of the drawing up with something. Um, and I've always been that way. Like even in high school, like we would look at still lives and I would fill every square inch with something. I thought that was so much more manageable to do than just drawing a white wall, which seemed really tough.
Yeah.
And it's taken a lot of like I've had to just break down as a human. And in that, like everything's gotten softer. And I really did have a point where I realized that like the drawing had to get softer too. And that's kind of when like the blending stump or whatever came in as a tool, in the
Surrender.
white space.
You're
So
a
no,
weaker artist for it, Rachel, but you know,
I know.
we'll
I
move
surrendered my rendering.
on. Yeah, surrender the render to the blender.
Exactly.